And that was kind of like the journey that got me to having my own back, and to respect myself enough and to really embody what Maya Angelou's quote, and this is how I start my book, that you alone are enough. Nothing you have to prove to anybody. And those are words, they're beautiful words, and we read them, but then when you really feel them and know it and internalize that, that's freedom.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Empowering Women podcast, where we celebrate bold voices, human-fueled leadership, and the women lighting the way toward a brighter future. I'm your host, Shannon Baumgartner. And on behalf of Empowering Women in Industry and our incredible founder, Charlie Matthews, thank you so very much for tuning in and helping us connect, educate, and empower women everywhere. Because as always, we rise together. And today's episode, it's a special one. Not only are we wrapping up our 7th season, can you believe it? But we are stepping into the holiday season, a time of reflection, belonging, and maybe just a little sparkle. So it's only fitting that my guest is someone who knows all about reflection, literally. Dr. Sheila Gujrathi is a biotech entrepreneur, physician, and trailblazer who's helping leaders everywhere see themselves more clearly. You may know her from her TED Talk entitled Shattering the Glass Ceiling by Finding the Right Mirrors, and her powerful new book, The Mirror Effect, which dives even deeper into how we break the ceilings above us and the ones within us. This conversation is full of light, insight, and the kind of encouragement we could all use as we close out this fabulous year. So grab your favorite holiday mug, coffee, cocoa, or whatever fuels your fire, and get ready to unwrap the gift of mirrors. Let's jing-jangle our way into this conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast. Believe it or not, it is that time of year again when the twinkle lights are glowing, your to-do lists are probably overflowing, and reflection is just not about the ornaments on your tree. But today we are talking about one of the greatest gifts you can give and receive, the gift of mirrors. My guest is Sheila Gujrathi, a biotech entrepreneur, physician, and trailblazer who's helping leaders everywhere see their own true reflection. You may know her from her TED Talk entitled Shattering the Glass Ceiling by Finding the Right Mirrors. And she also has an upcoming book, which we'll talk about, called The Mirror Effect, which takes that message even deeper. So pour yourself a little cup of holiday cheer, either coffee or cocoa or a little something stronger maybe, and join us as we talk about seeing ourselves clearly, leading boldly, and shining a little brighter this season. So Sheila, I am so excited to have you here for this conversation.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Shannon. I'm just thrilled, and I love the gift of mirrors. I think that's such a beautiful phrase, and it really captures actually what we can do for one another and for ourselves.
Yep. And I think that's what we're going to title this podcast, The Gift of Mirrors. And if you're new to this podcast, we love to start with stories on our podcast. And one of the things that you said that I thought was really funny, given my own background, you've walked into rooms full of Johns, Marks, and Teds in blue suits and or fleece vests. We've all been there, ladies, if you're being real. So what did those moments teach you about confidence, and how did it plant the seed for your TED Talk?
It's really been my formative experience professionally, as you're already alluding to, Shannon, and probably to many members of the audience, especially in our generations. It started, coming out of the academic university setting, really, as I went into even into medicine, when I was at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, walking into grand rounds, you look at the walls and there are all these paintings, but they're all older white men. There are no women anywhere. There are no people of color anywhere. And there's so many paintings, but you don't see yourself reflected anywhere. And I think, and you don't see yourself as a woman. I don't see myself any women of color, any people of color. So, I just immediately you don't even realize how comfortable you have gotten being uncomfortable. But we wear our, our masks, we put our shields on, and we go into these environments time and time again. So I think it just from a very young age, I had that experience. And then fast forward going into working at McKinsey and consulting, working with the boards and executive teams of Fortune 100 companies, again, not seeing myself reflected anywhere, and then going into the pharmaceutical areas and biotech and large biotech and large pharmaceutical companies. You walk into these what we call review committees, where they're making the decisions for the portfolio. But again, you're not seeing yourself surrounded, in terms of who's sitting around the table making those decisions. So you learn a lot about how to carry yourself, or you get conditioned, I should say, about how to carry yourselves, how you should speak, what's going to resonate really strongly, and how to be credible. Like how do you portray yourself with confidence? How people will believe you and think highly of you. So you get very conditioned about how to operate, behave, act, speak, talk in these environments. And that's what I've been doing for many decades in my career.
I'm laughing because Sheila, I just had this moment this past week in my day job, and I went to a supplier partner meeting, and there were about 6 people at the table, including me. The night before, there were 5-ish people at dinner, and I was the only female. And I'm 25 plus years into my career, so I've become numb to it. But I did sit there at the meeting that day and thought, wow, like here it is again, right? It didn't really. I don't even think about it much anymore. To your point, it's become so conditioned. But it's the first time I had met that supplier partner, and I had to worry about what I showed up in. Like versus they all showed up in polo shirts and a pair of slacks, right? Khakis, what have you. And I really stressed over what should I wear? I need to look credible, but we're also going to go out on a manufacturing floor. So what do I wear? And it just made me reflective. Here it is again, and it hasn't changed almost 25 years later into my career.
I know, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've been at investor conferences all year long and banking conferences, and I've gotten into the elevator, and I look around, and I'm surrounded by, the blue suits and the black suits and the gray suits, and I'm like the only, and I'm not wearing that. And I'm looking
I
around,
wasn't either. I wore
elevator.
red pants, and I think it really threw them. They're like, red pants? Why would you have red pants on?
Good for you. But it's the continued reality of, in the environments in which we face ourselves in. And that's okay. No blame, no shame, but let's talk about this more. Let's raise awareness of how we're feeling in these environments. And let's really, and the purpose of what I'm here for and writing this book about is let's help set ourselves up for success in a better way than I think we have done in the past.
Yeah, so in your TED Talk, you say the glass ceiling isn't just above us, but inside of us. I think that's just such a powerful twist on that term, pardon me. Can you share how you came to recognize your own internal ceiling and what helped you break it?
And I didn't realize that until quite late in my career. I mean, I always knew that, you know, and like my husband likes to say, women have to work twice as hard to get half the credit. Like there are all these sayings, and I believe that I was the one and only in many rooms, just like the story you just shared about something that happened to you recently. But I did have some fundamental moments, which actually was like a light bulb that went off, or more even like a lightning bolt of awareness. And one story I like to share was when I was CEO of one of my companies, Gossamer Bio. I was working, at the company head down, building it from the ground up, and working really long hours. I was thriving. I was building teams. I was focusing on building a thriving culture to drive performance, and just feeling really great about everything I was doing. But and then someone over the Christmas holidays, it was a December timeframe, sent me give me a gift with the poem from Marianne Williamson's book Return to Love. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
I'm not.
But it's a beautiful poem or a beautiful excerpt of her writing, and it basically goes like, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And I was sitting there reading this poem, and I was familiar with it, but I never had thought about this poem for me. And the fact that this employee who was a C-level executive who I've been working with for over 10 plus years saw me in this light was just so amazing. And I sat with that for a long time. And I actually asked these questions. Is this true? Am I powerful beyond measure? Or was I too frightened to find out? And I just saw myself through his eyes, and then I realized the other employees were seeing me through, and I saw myself through their eyes. And they were holding up a mirror to me in that very moment. So I did realize, and I started to think about how I am powerful. And I stepped into my power without me even realizing it. But I also realized the flip side, that I had been operating from this place of fear. And I continue to operate from this place of fear for a long time. And even just recognizing that that's where I was operating from, I realized, wow, I was holding myself back. And that was the first time I fully realized that I had an inner glass ceiling.
I think that's really powerful, because I think if many of our women listeners are honest with themselves, we all have created our own glass ceiling, including yours truly. I think we've all done that. We've all said, "Oh, I'll just sit here in the background," or I don't want to let that light shine, not in this place," or maybe not even believing they have that light, to your point.
Very much so. And again, and this is just a normal experience that we've been having, normal in the sense that it's a shared experience. And I really want to come from a place of like no judgment, because I think, and actually, in terms of how do you break that glass ceiling, and how do you, deal with it, I think, in terms of the steps that I have taken, the first step was just raising awareness about it. Just realizing that, again, we have this inner glass ceiling. I call it the FIDS: fear, insecurity, doubt, and shame.
Oh, I like that.
Yes. And so I'm like, I have FIDS. Okay. And that's normal in the sense that because we've had a lot of conditioning in our own lives, and we've all had different experiences, but some, again, common experiences of people telling us things and describing us things or questioning us in different ways. And, there's that kind of like double whammy double whammy effect that occurs where someone says something that's inappropriate to you, but and then that stings, and you have to deal with the hurt of that experience. But then you internalize it and say there's something
Yep.
wrong with you, and then you deal with the shame that's
Yep.
long lasting. So it's like we compound that through just our own experiences and that internalization that occurs. So we have FIDS, and so just naming it, raising awareness, and kind of understanding that they exist and it's natural to have them, but also realizing that you can break free of them and you won't be ruled by them, I think is really incredible. And then secondly,
That's very freeing, but keep going.
yeah, no, and then secondly, it's doing the internal work, that there is some work to be done here. For me, that required, I was really fortunate to have a very strong spiritual practice because I lost my father at a young age. So I was kind of questioning, what's this all about? Because he died when I was a young girl. And, I think I just was confronted with the reality of our frail existence early on in life. So I, found some spiritual practices that actually helped me, give me strength. So I had that. I had the good fortune to have multiple coaches throughout my professional career, especially at the larger companies I was working at. And then I also put myself into therapy again because of all of these things that I was dealing with. And so I think, and then I developed some practices of journaling, and then I came upon self-compassion, which really was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
That was,
We are terrible. I think women in particular about giving ourselves grace. We're harder on ourselves than we are anybody else in our lives.
yes, exactly. And then finding mirrors, a third step for me, actually finding people who actually I felt safe with and were reflecting my brilliance back to me and just had my back and then and just saw me in my potential. I think that was really transformative. So I speak about that in my TEDx talk. And then
Mm,
lastly, which is the most important step I find, is having my own back. All of that then resulted in me having my own back and stepping into my power. And that's something so precious because then no one can take that away from you. And that was kind
mm,
of like the journey that got me to having my own back, um, and to respect myself enough and to
mm,
really embody what Maya Angelou's quote, and this is how I start my book, that you alone are enough.
mm.
Nothing you have to prove to anybody. And those are words, they're beautiful words, and we read them, and but then when you really feel them and know it and internalize that,
Yeah.
that's freedom.
Yeah, I have a coach. I'll pick on her. Her name's Jennifer Watson. So, hi, Jennifer, if you're listening. One of the things she taught me was we often give up on ourselves. And she says, go find a picture of you when you were young, and keep it close by. And when you're having one of those moments, say, would you discourage this, however old? I think I was 5 in the picture we talked about. Would you give up on this 5-year-old girl? Would you dampen this 5-year-old girl's dreams? And of course, your answer is going to be no. Would you talk to this 5-year-old girl the way you would talk to your current self? And the answer is obviously no. So it's sort of what you're saying. It's learning to have your own back. It's looking at it maybe from a slightly different perspective, but the same end goal, I think.
I think that is such a beautiful practice. That I love that, and that is part of that compassion journey. To your point, I love thinking about that inner girl in all of us, or that inner child in all of us, and the young child, and how would we treat that person as an adult? It's horrifying, right, to think about some of the things we went through, and we would absolutely. It's not okay in any, full stop. It's not okay in any situation. Some of the things that we've experienced. I am really fortunate to have two wonderful children who are young
Mm,
adults, including an older son and a younger daughter. So I often that was a game changer for me personally because I
mm,
realized as I was parenting them that I would not speak to them the way, in some cases, the way I was parented. Again, my mother's an amazing mirror for me, but different culture, different time. I just would not, so when I
mm.
see my daughter, to your point, I say, when something's happening in my life, I'm like, well, what would I say to my daughter, Sorrel? I would
Yeah.
not talk to her this way. And I call it, when I talk about this in the book, and I have a dear friend, Sadell Howell, who talks about the itty bitty shitty committee that we have living in our heads.
Yeah.
And, and it's so true. And, shout out to Sadell. I love when she taught me that phrase. And it's like, and I share this with people, they're like, yes, we all have that in our heads. But
Yeah.
would we talk to our daughters and our sons and our loved ones like this, and our little girls and our little boys? No, we would not.
No.
So why is it okay for us to talk to ourselves like that? It's not.
Yeah. It's a great takeaway, listeners. Have your own back. And that sounds crazy. Journey. Are there been ones that you've just really, really stood out to you?
I'm so sorry. You just cut out for a second there. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, looks like my internet connection's a little unstable, so hopefully this will go through. It says you describe mirrors as people, and I quote you here, who see us, hear us, and reflect our brilliance. For you personally, what has been one of the most life-changing mirrors along your journey?
Oh, I've been fortunate to have so many mirrors, although I didn't realize that I had mirrors. I wasn't necessarily understanding that I was building a network, or like I call like the personal board of directors. And um, but one mirror that does stand out for me, very relevant, and I, of course, my mother was a huge mirror for me. She came over from India. She's a physician. She was one of the few women physicians growing up in her class. And when she came here to the States,
Mm,
she obviously was an immigrant, and just watching her thrive as a physician, being like an amazing doctor. She's a pediatrician, and many families would come up to me in our town just telling me what a brilliant doctor my mother was and how she had saved their child's life. And like,
Mm,
wow, what an inspiring role model for me.
mm,
But also because I lost my father at a young age, it really all fell onto her shoulders to raise me and my
mm.
brother. And
That's a lot.
a lot, alone in this country. And then, just she did bring over some of her family from India to support her, but putting us through medical school so that we didn't even have debt, and doing all of that,
Mm.
through her own hard work and effort. And then still being an excellent physician, like showing us what excellence looks like. I think just an incredible role model that and really showing me that I could achieve all my dreams and go for them, because she left everything in India and came here to this country to.
Yeah, she had to have been quite a trailblazer, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't understand the Indian culture, but I would imagine she was definitely one of very few.
And the Indian culture too, like there's not, I mean, there are many amazing Indian women who work, but in that generation, a lot of, women were staying home and
Mm,
playing that role. But my mom was not that. She was the matriarch of her family.
mm,
She sponsored and brought all of her younger brothers over. She still is the matriarch of her family to this day. She's like the wise counsel that we all listen to. So she's really incredible, and I'm so fortunate to have such a strong, powerful woman in my life like that. So she's been an incredible mirror for me,
mm.
and that's great. She is also very critical, so she's part of the committee that's in my head. So I just want to acknowledge that too. That
Yeah,
I
well, I think it's a good point. You can have people in your life that unfortunately can play both roles. That's what it sounds like.
And again, just raising awareness about that, like, because, I was always trying to please her. And there was a
Mm,
lot of criticism, and she's obviously very self-critical too. So we inherit a lot of that. So we have those voices in our head that are critical towards us. And I can use that and be critical of my children too. So I kind of, again, just like, I think it's just so important to have that awareness of like what's
yeah.
driving you and where are those thoughts coming from? Is that from me? Is that for some conditioning I've had? Because we've had to be really good and really excellent to be successful. And so there are reasons why, we are conditioned to be so hard on ourselves. In India, you have like some very 2 main years where you have to take these big exams, and that kind of determines the rest of your career. It's intense
Oh gosh,
and 12,
no pressure.
no pressure, right? Can you imagine? So so like that's something like they have to be perfect to really
Mm,
again, get to those like careers that they want to have. So that was a really big mirror for me. Another very big mirror for me just to share was a wonderful male mentor I had and sponsor, where when I was leaving a large pharma to go to, I decided I want to be an entrepreneur and join small startups. And I was thinking about what role I could play because I had a lot of great experiences working in large corporate, big pharma companies as an executive. He basically said, "Well, you're ready to be CEO." And I said, "What? What are you talking about?" I was like thinking like, I was like, okay, what's my next step in that, that stepping in that corporate ladder that I want to go. And he was just like, just basically was like, no, you're ready. You're great. You're a great leader. You have a lot of skills. You have so much experience. You could step into a CEO role at a small company. And I never even had considered it, but he planted
mm,
that idea in my mind. And because he saw me and he saw my brilliance and my potential, that really set me on the path to becoming a CEO.
mm.
I took a C-level executive job as chief medical officer role first, but then because of his words of wisdom and just being a mirror for me, that set me on that journey. And I'm really grateful that he said that to me.
I think it's so funny. That's happened to me many times, and it's funny that those people show you something. You're like, oh, whatever. You're just kidding. You're just blowing my ego up a little bit, right? Like at first, for me at least at first, I didn't believe them. I'm like, whatever. I don't know what you're seeing, but it's so funny. People, to your point about mirrors, see things that we often don't see in ourselves.
And we have to let that sink in, to your point, because you're like, oh, you're just making that up, or no, it's not true. They're actually saying this to you because they believe it. And if you can actually suspend your own FIDS and your own doubt to like let that sink in, it's just amazing because then you see yourself in a completely different light.
Yeah, I will tell you, it usually takes two people for me. So you don't know this about me, Sheila. The audience probably does. I'm an engineer, so I'm also a scientist, I guess, at heart. And so I'm like, okay, one dot does not a trend make. But when I hear it twice, I'm like, okay, there's got to be something to this.
Absolutely. And I'm an engineer too. I studied engineering
Oh, there
undergrad.
you go.
Yeah, and like I think that's right. Like this book, I mean, clearly it's really meant for anyone, any woman, and any really any person who just doesn't feel like they fit in, any minority groups,
Mm,
but women in STEM, women in finance. These are typically women in biotech and pharma. These are typically, as you know, more male-dominated fields.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, women in STEM is my passion, obviously. But well, moving on to a different concept. I love your concept, and I've heard it before of building a personal board of directors. But if somebody listening here is thinking, great idea, but where do I even start with that? What's your advice for assembling those mirrors around you, like effective ones, like building maybe ones that aren't people like you, I would think, and your personal board of directors?
Yes, and it's not easy to do, right? It's like,
No.
again, I had heard it before too, from my executive coaches, and I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not going to do that. Nice concept, that's for other people.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I thought the same thing. Yeah, yeah, whatever. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it really works. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, yeah. And I love this question because this is like where the rubber meets the road, right? It's like, can you actually do this? And the concept sounds great, but again, to your point, how do you go about doing it? And I think first, I always, again, as you can see from my language, and I have a common theme in terms of how I approach different problems, but I always believe it starts by getting clear on what you want. I truly do believe in intentionality as
Mm,
being something to like really be a guiding principle in how we live our life, because it's so true for so many different aspects, whether that's personal or professional. So you can't get the help you need unless you know kind of where you want to go. So asking yourself, like, what do I want out of my career? What roles do I want to play? What are the areas of expertise that I am really good at? What are areas of expertise that I'm not so great at? And how do I want my life to integrate both professionally and personally? Those are some key questions. And I talk about this in the journal that I also released with the book, to get clear on like your purpose, your vision for yourself, and your values. I think all of those things are really important. And once you have that, and hopefully I'm really advocating for the younger generations to do that earlier in their career, so they
mm.
can have that as like a little bit of a roadmap for themselves, knowing that it's all going to change. It's
Yeah, I was gonna say, and be willing to revisit it because
absolutely.
as you grow up, so to say, it will change and morph into something different.
It's a very dynamic experience that we have, right? Which may be different from some of the older generations, like where they kind of got into a company and they stayed there for multiple decades. I think we've all lived very fluid lives, and I've taken the road less traveled, and it's been a windy road, if you will. And the personal board of directors and your network and your people, it's all going to morph and change over time.
Yep.
But I do, like I did, I kind of came up with a framework that hopefully that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I talk about having different roles on your board. So you have your
Mm,
supporters who are your cheerleaders, who love you no matter what. This can be your family and your friends, and you need them in your life. People who are going to, again, have your back no matter what. You have mentors and sponsors, and there's a difference between those two groups of people. For those of you who may not know, mentors are people who are really willing to give you advice, and they're very helpful. But sponsors are the ones who are going to open up the doors for you. They're going to put your
yep.
name in the room, into the hat when you're not in the room. They're going to really promote you for opportunities. So you want to have sponsors, and you don't want to confuse the two, because sometimes I thought people who are mentors were going to be my sponsors, but they weren't, and that was a little disappointing. And then
Mm.
sometimes the sponsors, I was shocked by who was a sponsor for me. I was like, I didn't even.
I've had the same experience. What? That
Yeah.
person sponsored me? Really?
Yeah, you didn't even know like they knew you existed, So you
Right.
don't know where sponsors are going to come from. That's why you need to cast a wide net and just kind of keep showing up. We also need inspiring role models on our boards. Who are the people
Mm,
that we want to be like? Sally Ride said, "You can't be what you can't see." That famous NASA astronaut, the first American woman in space. Now, then she became a mirror and an inspiring role model for so many women in STEM. So you want those inspiring role models, even if you don't know them personally, you want them in your mind. But hopefully you actually know people that you want to be like that are on
mm,
your board. And then I talk about subject matter experts, because again, there are
mm,
blind spots we have. For me
mm.
personally, it's like legal, lawyers. I don't understand legalese at all. And kind of getting some of that
I'd
help.
prefer not to. We won't get into why, but it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. And I can't logically form it out in my head.
So those are kind of some of the roles you
Yeah.
want. And then, I just say start small and strategic, like just look for people who are approachable and people who show an interest in you. When they
Yeah.
show interest in you, to your point, like don't just brush it off. Be like, wow, thank you so much for saying that. Would you like to have lunch? I'd love to get your advice
Mm,
on these things. People do want to help. And be thoughtful about the value exchange so that if they offer something to you, to really think about how you can help them.
yeah.
Oftentimes, people want to have like young people, to mentor because you give them a lot of ideas. And I know that's true for me personally. I've just been doing a lot of events with students at Harvard and MIT and
Mm,
Western, and I find it so fulfilling. It gives me so much energy.
mm,
And look inside your organization, but also outside your organization, and network strategically within your industry
mm.
groups. And lastly, just kind of overcome that self-doubt to like put yourself out there and ask for help. And
Whew, that's hard.
yeah,
It
it's
really is hard.
and it's a muscle you got to practice. Just kind
Yeah,
of keep
true.
doing it, and it's going to be amazing because before you know
Yeah.
it, you're going to have a network.
Yeah. Well, speaking of networks, if I'm correct, you started a biotech CEO sisterhood, and I believe you co-founded it. And for me, it sounds like a disco ball moment, to use the mirror analogy, because the room is suddenly full of mirrors and belonging, right? If you're there with that. What did that first meeting feel like, and how did it shift your perspective?
It truly was transformative. When I walked into that room, when we had our first, we didn't even know the name of it yet. It was a women's CEO summit from the biotech industry. So we invited every woman CEO that we could think of that we knew were supportive of other women. And we
Mhm.
had 50 names, and 25 women came to this like weekend.
That's a pretty good take rate.
It was amazing, right? 50% came. And I was nervous. I know my co-founders were also nervous. Angie, you and Julia Owens, the three of us, didn't know how it was going to go, what was going to happen this weekend. And we walked into this room and it was magic because we felt so safe and we knew we didn't have to prove ourselves. And we didn't even know that you could walk into a room with such amazing senior leaders and feel this way, just feel so comfortable. And then we realize, or I realized, oh my God, that's how the other people feel all the time. And isn't that a beautiful thing? Like I've been operating from this place of FIDS, wearing my mask and my armor, going
Mm,
into every room prepared for battle almost.
mm.
Not in a like a aggressive way, but just in a way that I didn't even realize. And
Yeah,
when
I
I
think you're shielding yourself, because the problem is you're probably shielding some of your own emotions, but then you're shielding of whatever you think could be coming your way.
Yes, and you want to be prepared because you've had these zingers come to you before, and it can kind of knock you off balance. So it's also there are reasons why we've developed the shield and the armor. But when I walked into this room and I knew I just belonged, and no one was going to
Mm.
question whether I deserved to be in that room, it was transformative. And I decided in that moment that this was going to be my new normal. And even though I was going to continue to walk into rooms where that wasn't the case in terms of not maybe being surrounded by mirrors, internally, I was going to hold on to this and this is where I was going to operate from. And
That's
that
really powerful, because I love what you're saying. I think for me, I found it harder to do, but I think it's great advice.
if I could bottle up those feelings and we continue we've grown, we're over 450 women CEOs,
Oh,
we're having
wow.
events regionally, nationally. We have continue to have the annual summit. We get our sisterhood fix, to your point, because we do need to kind of go back to the well. If I
Yeah.
could bottle this up and make a pill of it, I would, and I would take it
Yeah.
every day and I would give it to everyone I know, men and women alike, because it's just a beautiful feeling to feel like you belong. And we do belong. That
Mm.
is our truth, but we just don't know it, or, have not let ourselves feel it, or whatever the reasons are. Again, no judgment, but you're not crazy. You absolutely belong. And that's something that that's what I'm trying to really impart in this book, because I want to be there along people's journey to get to that point of self-discovery and those truths about ourselves, that we can step into our power, we can be the authentic leader that we are, but we can really fundamentally know that we belong and that we have nothing to prove. And I think that is just, again, liberating.
I think it's liberating. And we talk about, at least in the worlds I've been in, about women having confidence, right? And I kind of hate the conversation, but I understand it's necessary. But if you have that center, I think it's easier to walk in a room with confidence, regardless of who's in the room or who isn't in the room.
And that's the goal, because we can't control our environments, and we're going to find ourselves in all these different situations, and some of them are going to be tough and challenging. That's life.
Yeah.
Life is full of curveballs, right? Personally and professionally. It's just what it is. But if we can be centered, if we can be our own powerful, authentic self, then we're going to be prepared, better prepared to step into those rooms to deal with those situations.
Mm,
I would argue that you can't actually assess a situation objectively if you're not centered, because we have to be
true.
objective to assess what's going on around us. And you can't be your most powerful self if you're being triggered or reactive
Yeah.
and you're dealing.
Because, like you said, the itty bitty shitty committee's in your head when you walk into that room.
Exactly. You need them to like be gone, and you need to be that centered self. And then you
Yeah.
can really make change and just do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, so December, as everyone knows, is the season of giving, regardless of your religious background. So let's tie it all in. What do you see as the gift of mirrors that we can offer each other? Does someone being a mirror become a leadership act? So how do we give that gift, and how does it become a leadership act that each of us are doing?
It's a beautiful thing because we could all be mirrors to people in our lives, including ourselves, starting today. There's nothing like significant that you have to do, in the sense that, we all have loved ones and peers and colleagues and just people who need support. And we can give them that gift of being a mirror for them. We can see them, we can
Mm,
understand them, we can have their back. And it's really small acts, saying words of encouragement, connecting someone to someone, an important connection that they don't have in their life today. There's so many steps we can take, along that gift of being a mirror. And it is a leadership app because it is using your influence to lift others up. I always say leadership is independent of position,
mm,
title, role, demographic. We're all leaders in our own life, and we can all be that leader to someone else. So I would ask everyone to do that, to be a gift of being a mirror to someone in their life.
yeah.
And accepting that gift of mirrorship coming from someone else as well, allowing themselves
Mm,
to actually be seen, and acknowledging someone when they're being a mirror for them. I think
mm,
it goes both ways. And we can advocate for so many people. As you know, we can be charitable in this time as well. And that's also being a mirror for others. The mirror concept I love because it's broad and it can be used in so many ways.
yeah.
You
I
know,
think one of the most powerful things I've learned of being a people leader is, at the end of the day, the fundamental truth is that people just want to be seen and they want to belong. And that's a lot easier said than done. But if you can do that as a peer or as a leader of people, you have created something special for that person.
this a very simple thing to do is to celebrate others publicly. When we're in those positions of leaders, or even if we're not the leader of a group or an organization, and when we are, it's amazing because you're so powerful as a leader. People are looking to you. So you can celebrate others publicly. I talk about doing this even on social media, shouting out to a friend or someone who, you're seeing from another company who's doing an amazing, job at whatever they're doing, like celebrate that, and let
Mm.
people celebrate you and celebrate yourself, give that gift of being a mirror to yourself.
It's
Uh,
interesting you say that, because I think for me, one of the things I've struggled with is comparison to other people. And I think when you start celebrating others, it starts, at least for me, it started breaking down the comparison to thought process.
isn't that true? I mean, we say that, like, that comparison is really like, it robs our joy,
It
you know
does.
just deep, and just breaking out of that lack mindset, like we have this mindset of lack, and moving to more of an abundance mindset, like there's more than enough for everybody, and we can all be our best selves, is again, that's such a gift. Give
It
that.
is really a gift.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure that we have time to talk about your book. You have interspersed it throughout our conversation, but I want to make sure that we say it again. You've got a book. Is it been released or it's coming out very soon? I cannot remember.
It's been released.
It's been released. Okay, that's awesome. We will include a note. We will include a link, pardon me, in the show notes. And it's called The Mirror Effect. Um, you've given us a little bit, but there's any other sneak peek of what readers can expect in the book, and maybe how it expands on your TED Talk?
I started writing this book about 4 years ago. So it's been a journey. It's been a labor of love. And it really helped lead up to the TED Talk. So when I was asked to give a TED Talk last year and asked if I had anything to say or if I had one idea worth sharing, I'm like, actually, I do. And it was around this concept of mirrors. And so, but then what I hadn't done is I hadn't put that necessarily front and center in my book. So I actually was able to take the concept from the TED Talk and then put it back into my book and make my book revolve around this concept of the mirror effect. So I loved how it was, something that it's like iterating back and forth. And my experiences with the Biotech CEO Sisterhood, writing this book and doing this TED Talk have all influenced each other.
Oh, that's interesting.
Along this, road to transformation. So it's really been a beautiful gift for me to kind of go along this journey. And what I then did is I was writing this book and I had a 3-part framework for this journey, but then I put the idea of the mirrors in as well. So the book itself is divided into 3 parts that mirror a leadership journey. Part 1 is holding up your own mirror and knowing thyself. Part 2 is reflecting on your surroundings and understanding your environment. And part 3 is making a life worth mirroring and setting yourself and others up for success. And so that became the framework, really using this concept of mirrors from the TED Talk, which I talk about in the 3-part series of my TED Talk, and then bringing that into the book. So part 1, this is where we do that deep internal work and raise that awareness. And I walk the reader through confronting the person's FIDS, our own FIDS, that fear, insecurity, doubt, and shame that we've been talking about. I also talk about limiting archetypes that we are really familiar with, like the people pleaser, the imposter, the micromanager.
I'm laughing because I'm like case 1 for the one you just mentioned, people pleaser.
Me too. I am such a people pleaser. So sharing that and understanding like we can fall into these archetypes, but they don't have to define us, and how do we break free of them? And I introduce what I call the 3 C's: compassion, centering, and celebrating, as a really nice framework to kind of break through of our internal glass ceiling, and really building that foundation so we do know that we are powerful beyond measure. And so that's a whole journey. So I spent a lot of time on part 1 because I do believe it starts and ends with ourselves. And, to do that work, I think, and just go along that journey is incredibly powerful. And then part 2 is around really understanding our surroundings better, because we have to work in these environments. And we do face conscious and unconscious bias and sometimes difficult work environments. So I talk a lot about identifying what those work environments can be and also how to perform well in them, and really do that in a way where it's not damaging to ourselves, because it's okay to work in an environment. All environments are going to have pros and cons to it, just being realistic. But as long as those environments aren't affecting our sense of self, our sense of worth, that's really fundamental. But also I talk about finding a great environment to work in, because it's like being in relationships. When you're in an amazing relationship, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to settle for less. I'm never going to go backward to that relationship that didn't treat me well or where I wasn't thriving. And that's true for work as well. We have choice. We have more choice than we recognize or realize. So it's important for us to not settle for less, to find a thriving, really inspiring work environment for ourselves, because life is short and we spend so much time at work. So
yeah, we do.
So we really want to do that. And
it took me a long time to learn that lesson, but I have learned it.
and again, you're never going to go back, right?
Nope. Not obviously work environments sometimes change outside of our control. But to your point, when you recognize it, you're like, okay, we need to figure out, is this situation going to change or do I need to change?
That's right. And you have choice. You can make those choices, and you can lean on your board and your network to help you even make
Yep.
that change and make that assessment of what's going
Yep.
on with you. I talk about, I have a 3-part framework for assessing environments: assess, ally, and act. And so, assess, like figure out what's going on; ally, figure out who your allies are in the company, outside your company, to give you that kind of objective viewpoint. And then make decisions. Do you want to stay there? Do you want to leave? Do you want to, how do you want to carry yourself? Sometimes you can role model, be the change that you want to see. You can role model, as Gandhi says, and try to make a change within your environment before maybe deciding to leave. But there's a lot that you can do. So I talk about that in the book. And then the last part of the book is where we put it all together with practical strategies. And I focus on some areas that I just felt like I wasn't really strong in. So that's, again, building your personal board of directors. Again, I did not do a great job of
Oh,
building
yeah, yeah.
this.
We'll do that later, right?
Yeah. I talk about negotiating and how
uh,
important it is to be able to negotiate without compromising your integrity. And what does that look like for you personally? But we're negotiating all the time, whether we know it or not.
mm-hmm.
So I think kind
I
of
learned that lesson too the hard way.
And the third part was like harnessing our presence and really understanding that so much of communication is nonverbal. So how we show up is really important. And then doing that work to show up in a positive way is very powerful. And so I talk about different examples of that. And if you watch Ted Lasso, but Rebecca Walton does this great Kali power pose before she walks into a room filled with male soccer team owners.
Right.
Franchise owners, and that really was very helpful for her. And so I talk a lot about these different types of strategies that we can do to, again, set us up for success and be mirrors for others as well in our lives.
I love that. Well, if someone's looking to give this as a gift, since we're in the holiday season, or as a gift as somebody starts their new year, where can they find it?
Yes, it's available at all your typical places, Amazon, of course, Barnes and Noble, hopefully local bookstores. I'm doing my best to get them into retail stores. I also have an accompanying workbook and journal because, again,
Okay.
I really wanted to make this alive and practical. So I created that as a companion, which has journaling prompts and exercises for each chapter. And there is some science and research that handwriting journaling actually can be very effective in our rewiring. It increases neuroplasticity and it increases the cognitive engagement to break free of old limiting patterns and habits and forming new ones. So I do think this is also research backed in terms of having a workbook and journal just to kind of get out of your head and onto paper.
Yeah, agreed. I'm old school. I like to write. I just went on that trip I just talked about. I wrote out my notes and it forced me to look at them twice when I put them. It's a little bit of an extra work, but I think to your point, it does help you remember to rewire what you're looking to change.
That's really
Yeah.
great. And I try to summarize my learnings because what I do think is a little bit different about this book is these are hard-earned lessons learned. I've played all these roles. I've been a CEO, a chairwoman, a board director. I've also risen up through these corporate leadership ranks and been in academic universities. So, and been an entrepreneur and founder. So I've learned, I wanted to impart these lessons learned and hopefully have people learn from some of my mistakes and avoid some of the suffering that I went through. That's incredibly meaningful to me. So,
I love that.
yeah, so I try to summarize at the end of each chapter, but I also have these exercises that hopefully will really be helpful.
Well, we're going to end with one final question to wrap up. And it's sort of a play on a holiday note. If you could tuck one piece of advice, like a little ornament of wisdom, into our listeners' stockings this year, what would it be?
Well, the first so many decades of my life, the piece of advice was believe in yourself. I think that, because that's really what I was doing. And again, but now I would say my piece of advice is you don't have to do it alone.
Mm,
And we weren't meant to. We're human. We're meant to actually do this together and lean on people and have them help you in your transformation and on your journey. I'm hoping to help in a small way through this
mm.
book and journal. But whatever that is for your audience and whomever is listening, just know that and find your people.
Yeah, I will say I love the disco ball analogy. So I would say to your point, don't do it alone and go find your disco ball. For the listeners, they know I love sparkles, and so that brings up a really fun image in my head.
I love that. Disco ball away. I mean, life can be a disco ball. These
It
rooms that we
can.
find ourselves can be a disco ball, and there's so much joy and fulfillment. That's when we truly live a thriving life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Sheila. It's hard to believe we're at an end, but where can folks find you as we wrap up?
So I am around on social media, of course, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I have also have a newsletter that I
Okay.
release every month, and I try to bring up again more lessons learned, and it's really real and dynamic things that I'm actively dealing with on a daily basis. So please sign up for my newsletter. Please follow me on social media and reach out if there's anything I can do to be of help. And I am doing events, so I'm trying to go to different
Okay.
cities, and if people would like me to come to their companies, I would be happy to think about corporate events or different leadership groups. So yeah, just anything I can do to be helpful. And it's been such a pleasure to be here.
It has been fun. We will put those links in the show notes so that folks can reach out to you. I know if you're part of an employee resource group, you're probably planning for 2026. So put Sheila on your list of potential speakers at your next event. Well, thank you, Sheila, for your time. And to all my listeners, it's been an amazing season number 7. It's hard to believe that. And we have a wonderful holiday with your family, and I will see you soon. Bye, everyone. What a heartfelt and hope filled way to wrap up our season and to step into the holidays. Sheila reminded us that mirrors, they're not just objects hanging on the wall, they're people, they're moments, they're truths we sometimes forget to tell ourselves. And if you take one thing from today's conversation, let it be her powerful words. Having your own back is precious because once you find it, no one can take that away from you. So here's your call to action. This season, give the gift of mirrors. Be the person who sees someone's brilliance before they see it themselves. Celebrate someone publicly. Offer encouragement. Make an introduction. Hold up the kind of reflection that reminds someone that they belong, they matter, and their light deserves to shine just as brightly as any holiday star. And just as importantly, let yourself receive that gift. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be supported. I know it's not easy. Let yourself believe the good things people reflect back to you, even the ones that make you blush a little, especially those. And if you are new to our Empowering Women in Industry community, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. You can find links in the show notes to our website, mentoring circles, monthly meetups, and membership network. It's truly one of the best gifts you can give yourself going into the new year. A community that helps you grow, connect, and lead with courage. And of course, sip a little cocoa along the way. And before we wrap this season, I'd love to ask one final gift from you. On your favorite podcast platform, please like, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps more listeners find their way to this incredible community, our ever growing constellation of human fueled leaders. Before we close, I want to leave you with one last reflection from a woman whose work has touched so many of us. Brene Brown reminds us, and I quote, "True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are." What a beautiful truth to carry with you into the holidays and beyond, especially after today's conversation. You belong exactly as you are, and your light is needed in all the rooms you'll walk into in the new year. So until next time, stay bold, stay human, and keep igniting your fire within.